The gunshot echoed across the frozen ranch just as Clara's hand touched the kitchen door. Inside, Wade Blackthorne stood with his rifle aimed at the polished stranger who'd just called her by a name she'd buried years ago. Her carefully hidden past had finally caught up, and the man she was falling for was about to discover every lie she'd told. But let me back up. This is a story about a woman running from ghosts, a broken cowboy who'd forgotten how to feel, and the kind of love that refuses to play it safe. Stick around until the end. You'll want to see how this one turns out. And hey, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's go back to where it started, a freezing November morning in 1882, when a desperate woman stepped off a stagecoach in Red Hollow, Wyoming, with nothing but lies and a suitcase full of secrets. Clara Bennett, though that wasn't really her name, had been riding for 3 days straight when the stagecoach finally rattled into Red Hollow. Her back ached, her dress was covered in trail dust, and she was running out of places to hide. The town wasn't much. A crooked main street, a general store with peeling paint, a saloon that looked like it had seen better decades. Everything was coated in November cold, the kind that sank into your bones and didn't let go. She climbed down from the coach with her worn leather suitcase and immediately felt every eye in town lock onto her. A woman traveling alone wasn't common out here. A woman traveling alone with no wedding ring, no family, and no believable story. That made people nervous. Clara kept her head down and walked straight to the only place that mattered, the posting board outside the general store. Her fingers were numb as she scanned the notices. Ranch hand wanted, seamstress needed, and then almost hidden beneath a notice about lost cattle. Cook needed. Blackthorne Ranch, room and board. Inquire with Wade Blackthorne. Clara's heart jumped. She ripped the notice down before anyone else could see it and shoved it into her coat pocket. "You looking for work?" She spun around. An older man with a thick grey beard stood behind her, tobacco stains on his vest. Suspicious eyes locked on her face. "I might be," Clara said carefully. "Blackthorne Ranch ain't no place for a woman like you." "And what kind of woman is that?" The man grinned without warmth. "The kind that looks like she's running from something." Clara's jaw tightened. "I'm looking for honest work, that's all." "Honest?" The man chuckled. "Well, Wade Blackthorne's desperate enough he might just hire you anyway. Ranch is barely hanging on. Lost half his men last month. His cook quit 2 weeks back. You can ride? Well enough. Then head west out of town, follow the creek about 5 miles. Can't miss it." He spat into the dirt. "Though, I'd think twice if I were you. Wade's colder than this damn weather, and that ranch has got a shadow hanging over it." Clara didn't care about shadows. She'd been living in her own for long enough. She bought supplies with the last of her money, flour, salt, a small tin of lard, and convinced a freight driver heading that direction to let her ride in the back of his wagon. The man didn't talk much, which suited her fine. The ranch appeared just as the sun started sinking. It sat in a valley between low hills, surrounded by split-rail fences that looked like they were barely holding together. The main house was sturdy but plain, rough-cut timber, a stone chimney, shutters that needed paint. The barn listed slightly to one side. Horses stood in a corral, their breath steaming in the cold air. It looked tired, like it had been beaten down and hadn't quite figured out how to get back up. Clara climbed down from the wagon, thanked the driver, and walked toward the house with her suitcase gripped tight in one hand. Before she reached the porch, the door swung open. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, probably in his mid-30s, though it was hard to tell with the kind of face that didn't give much away. Dark hair that needed cutting, a jaw that looked like it had been carved with a dull knife, and eyes, grey, cold, and completely unreadable. He looked her over without saying a word. Clara straightened her spine. I'm here about the cook position. That's so. His voice was low, rough, like he didn't use it much. I saw your notice in town, Clara continued. I can cook, I can clean, I don't complain, and I don't cause trouble. Wade Blackthorne crossed his arms. You got references? No? Experience? Plenty. Where'd you work before? Clara hesitated for half a second too long. A boarding house? Back east. Where east? Does it matter? Wade's eyes narrowed. It does, if you're lying. Her stomach clenched, but she didn't look away. I need work, Mr. Blackthorne. You need a cook. That's all that should matter. For a long moment, he just stared at her. Then he turned his head slightly and called over his shoulder. Henry! A grizzled cowboy appeared in the doorway, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked Clara up and down with open skepticism. She says she can cook, Wade said, flatly. Henry snorted. Can she now? I can, Clara said firmly. All right then. Wade gestured toward the house. Prove it. The kitchen was a disaster. Dried food crusted on the stove, unwashed dishes piled in the basin. The floor hadn't been swept in weeks. It smelled like grease and neglect. Clara set her suitcase down and rolled up her sleeves. Henry leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You got an hour. We eat at 6. How many men? 8, counting Wade. And the boy. What boy? Wade's nephew, Noah. He's 10. Henry's voice softened slightly. Lost his folks a year back. Don't talk much. Clara nodded. What do you have for supplies? Henry shrugged. Check the pantry. Ain't much. He wasn't wrong. The pantry held some flour, cornmeal, a few jars of preserves, salted pork, and not much else. But Clara had worked with less. She got to work. First, she cleaned the stove. Then she started a fire and set a pot of water to boil. She sliced the pork thin, seasoned it with what little salt and pepper she could find, and let it start rendering in a cast iron skillet. While that cooked, she mixed cornmeal, flour, a bit of lard, and buttermilk she found in the cold box into a thick batter. Cornbread, simple, fast, filling. She poured the batter into a pan and slid it into the oven, then turned her attention to the pork. She added onions, half rotten, but she cut away the bad parts, and let them caramelize slowly. The smell started to fill the kitchen. By the time the men started filing in, the table was set. Cornbread still warm, pork and onions, a pot of beans she'd managed to salvage and season. The cowboy stood in the doorway, staring. Well? Henry barked. You gonna eat or just stand there looking stupid? They moved fast after that. Clara stood off to the side, watching. As they tore into the food, nobody spoke, they just ate. And then, one by one, they went back for seconds. Wade sat at the head of the table, chewing slowly, his face unreadable. When he finally looked up, his eyes met hers. You're hired. Relief flooded through her, but she kept her expression neutral. Thank you. Rooms upstairs. Second door on the right. You'll cook 3 meals a day. Keep the house clean. Stay out of the men's way. He paused. And don't ask questions. Clara nodded. Understood. Wade stood and walked out without another word. Henry grinned at her. Welcome to Blackthorn Ranch, lady. Hope you last longer than the last one. That night, Clara lay in the small cold room upstairs and stared at the ceiling. She'd done it. She'd found work. A place to stay. Somewhere remote enough that maybe, just maybe, Vincent Mercer wouldn't find her. But as she closed her eyes, she couldn't shake the image of Wade Blackthorne's face. Cold, guarded, haunted. He looked like a man who'd buried something deep and didn't plan on digging it back up. Clara understood that feeling better than she wanted to admit. The next morning, she woke before dawn and got to work. She baked bread, real bread, with yeast she found tucked away in the pantry. She cooked eggs and fried potatoes and made coffee strong enough to wake the dead. When the men stumbled into the kitchen, they stopped in their tracks. "Holy hell," one of them muttered. Henry grinned. "Told you she could cook?" Wade appeared last, his hair still damp from washing. He poured himself coffee, took a sip, and glanced at Clara. "This'll do," he said quietly. It wasn't much, but coming from him, it felt like high praise. Over the next few days, Clara settled into a rhythm. She cooked, she cleaned, she kept to herself. The men started to relax around her. They joked more, smiled more. A few of them even said thank you when she refilled their plates. But Wade stayed distant. He worked from sunup to sundown, barely spoke, and disappeared into his office most nights. Clara rarely saw him except at meals. And even then, he ate quickly and left. The only person who seemed lonelier than Wade was Noah. The boy was small for 10, thin, pale. He had his uncle's grey eyes, but where Wade's were cold, Noah's were just sad. He didn't sit with the men during meals. He ate alone in the corner, head down, never making a sound. Clara's heart ached every time she saw him. One evening, after the men had gone to bed, she found Noah sitting on the porch steps, staring out at the dark hills. She sat down beside him, careful not to crowd him. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then Clara said softly, "I used to sit like this when I was your age, just looking at nothing, trying to figure out where I fit." Noah glanced at her, but didn't say anything. "It's hard," Clara continued, "when the world doesn't make sense anymore. When the people you love are gone and you don't know how to feel normal again." Noah's voice was so quiet, she almost missed it. "Did you figure it out?" Clara smiled sadly. "Still working on it." Noah looked back at the hills. "My ma used to bake cornbread, just like yours." Clara's throat tightened. "Yeah? Tasted the same. I'm glad." Noah stood abruptly and walked back inside without another word. But the next morning he sat at the table with the men instead of in the corner. It was a small thing, but it mattered. 2 weeks passed, the ranch started to feel different, warmer somehow. The men laughed more, worked harder. Even Wade seemed a little less tense, though he still kept his distance. Clara told herself that was fine. She wasn't here to make friends. She was here to survive. But late at night, when the house was quiet and she lay alone in her small room, she couldn't help but wonder what Wade's story was. What had happened to make him so cold? And why did she care? She shoved the thought away and closed her eyes. She couldn't afford to care. Not about Wade, not about anyone. 'Cause caring meant letting people in. And letting people in meant they could hurt you. 3 weeks after Clara arrived, everything changed. It started with the cattle. Wade and the men rode out early to check the south fence line. Clara was kneading dough when Henry came back alone, his face pale. "What happened?" she asked. 3 calves slaughtered, throats cut clean." Henry's voice was tight. "And there was a message." "What kind of message?" Henry didn't answer. He just walked out. Clara's stomach twisted. That night, Wade didn't come to dinner. She found him in the barn, standing in front of an empty stall, staring at nothing. "Mr. Blackthorne?" He didn't turn around. "You should go inside." "What's going on?" "Nothing that concerns you." Clara stepped closer. "If something's threatening this ranch, it concerns me. I live here now." Wade finally looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something other than cold indifference in his eyes. Fear. "Someone's trying to scare me off my land," he said, quietly. "They've been at it for months. Cutting fences, poisoning water, now killing livestock." "Who?" Wade's jaw tightened. "Rich men. Men who want this valley for the railroad. They've been buying up land, forcing people out. I'm the last one left." Clara's blood went cold. "And if you don't sell?" Then they'll make sure I lose everything anyway. She thought about Vincent Mercer, about powerful men who crushed anyone in their way. You can't let them win, she said firmly. Wade laughed bitterly. I don't have a choice. I'm broke, Clara. I've got maybe 2 months before the bank forecloses, and even if I had the money, I don't have the manpower to fight them. Then find it. It's not that simple. It never is. Clara crossed her arms. But you don't strike me as the kind of man who gives up. Wade stared at her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, just a little. You don't know me at all. Maybe not, Clara said. But I know what giving up looks like, and you're not there yet. Wade's smile faded. You sound like you've had practice. Clara looked away. We've all got things we're running from, Mr. Blackthorne. That why you're here? Running? Her heart slammed against her ribs. I'm here because I needed work. And you couldn't find it anywhere else? I needed work here. Wade stepped closer, his eyes searching her face. What are you hiding, Clara? She forced herself to meet his gaze. Nothing that'll hurt you? That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. For a moment, she thought he'd push harder, but instead, he just nodded slowly. Fair enough. We've all got secrets. He walked past her toward the house, and Clara let out a shaky breath. That was too close. She couldn't let him get any closer. But distance was harder to maintain than she'd expected. 'Cause over the next few days, Wade started spending more time in the kitchen. Not obviously, he'd come in to refill his coffee, or check the stove, or ask if she needed anything from town. But Clara noticed, and she noticed the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Like he was trying to figure her out, like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. It made her nervous, and worse, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Seen. One evening, Clara was washing dishes when Noah appeared beside her, holding a small wooden horse. My pa made this, he said quietly. Clara dried her hands and crouched down to his level. It's beautiful. He was good at carving. Ma said he could have sold them, but he only made them for me. Sounds like he loved you a lot. Noah nodded, his eyes shining. Do you think they're watching? Ma and Pa? Clara's throat ached. I think if love is real, it doesn't just stop, so yeah. I think they're watching. Noah hugged the horse to his chest. Uncle Wade doesn't talk about them. He gets mad if I ask. He's not mad at you, sweetheart. He's just hurting. Are you hurting too? The question caught her off guard. Why would you think that? Because you look sad. Like Uncle Wade. Clara blinked back tears. Yeah, I guess I am. Noah reached out and took her hand. His fingers were small and warm. It's okay, he whispered. You can be sad here. Nobody minds. Something inside Clara cracked wide open. She pulled Noah into a hug, and he didn't pull away. When she finally let go, Wade was standing in the doorway. Their eyes met, and for the first time since she'd arrived, Wade Blackthorne looked at her like she was more than just the cook. He looked at her like she mattered. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Noah, about Wade, about the way this broken ranch had somehow started to feel like something she hadn't had in years. A home. But she couldn't let herself believe it. 'Cause homes were temporary. Safety was an illusion. And the past always caught up. She just didn't know it would happen so soon. The black carriage arrived on a cold December morning. Clara was in the kitchen, kneading dough, when she heard the horses. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked to the window. A polished black carriage sat in front of the house. Expensive, out of place, and stepping out of it was a man she'd prayed she'd never see again. Vincent Mercer, tall, handsome in a cold, calculating way, perfectly dressed with a silk vest and a gold watch chain, and a smile that made Clara's blood turn to ice. Her hands started shaking. No, not here, not now. She backed away from the window, her heart hammering. Wade was already outside, walking toward Mercer with Henry close behind. Clara couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Wade's posture shift, tense, wary. And then Mercer pointed at the house. At her. Wade's head snapped toward the window and Clara ducked out of sight. Panic clawed at her chest. She had to run. Now, before Mercer got inside, before Wade found out the truth. She turned toward the stairs and froze. Noah stood in the doorway, staring at her with wide, frightened eyes. "Miss Clara? Who's that man?" Clara's voice shook. "Nobody. Just go to your room, sweetheart." "But now, Noah, please." He ran. Clara grabbed her suitcase from under the bed and started shoving clothes inside. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She heard the front door slam open. Footsteps, voices, and then Wade's voice, loud and sharp. "I don't care who you are. Get off my land." Mercer's voice was smooth, amused. "I'm not here for trouble, Mr. Blackthorne. I'm here for Margaret." Clara's blood turned to ice. Wade's voice dropped dangerously low. "There's no Margaret here." "Oh, I think there is. Pretty woman. Brown hair. Calls herself Clara now, I'd imagine." Silence. Then Wade's footsteps, fast, heavy, pounding up the stairs. The door to her room slammed open. Wade stood there, chest heaving, eyes blazing. Who the hell is Margaret? Clara's suitcase fell from her hands, and the last fragile piece of her carefully constructed lie shattered into nothing. Clara couldn't breathe. Wade stood in the doorway, his chest heaving, grey eyes locked on her face with an intensity that made her want to disappear into the floor. "I asked you a question," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Who the hell is Margaret?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Downstairs, she could hear Mercer's voice, smooth and patient, talking to Henry. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. He wasn't leaving. Wade took a step closer. "Clara, it's complicated," she managed. Then, uncomplicated. "I can't try." Her hands were shaking so badly, she had to clench them into fists. "That man downstairs, he's dangerous. And if he's here, it means I need to leave. Right now." Wade's eyes narrowed. "You're not going anywhere until you tell me what's going on." "You don't understand? Then make me understand." His voice cracked on the last word, and Clara flinched. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Wade exhaled slowly and dragged a hand through his hair. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, rougher. "I've got a man downstairs calling you by a name that ain't yours. He showed up in a carriage that costs more than my ranch. And you're packing a bag like the devil himself is after you." He paused. "So yeah, I don't understand. But I need to." Clara's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because you've been living under my roof for a month. Because my nephew trusts you. Because..." He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "Because I have a right to know if you're putting my family in danger." The words hit her like a slap. He was right. She'd brought this to his door. She'd lied. She'd hidden. And now Mercer was downstairs, probably spinning some story that would destroy whatever fragile trust she'd managed to build here. Clara sank down onto the edge of the bed, her legs suddenly too weak to hold her. "My real name is Margaret Ashcombe," she said quietly. "I worked for a law firm in Chicago. 3 years ago, I uncovered documents proving that a coalition of railroad investors and bankers were using fraudulent contracts to seize ranch lands across the Western Territories. Thousands of acres, dozens of families." Wade didn't say anything. He just stood there, listening. Clara forced herself to continue. I tried to expose them. I went to the authorities, the newspapers, anyone who would listen. Her voice cracked. But they had too much power, too much money. They destroyed my reputation, got me fired, made sure no one would believe me. And the man downstairs? Vincent Mercer. He's one of them, one of the worst. Clara's hands twisted in her lap. He's been hunting me for 2 years. Every time I settle somewhere, he finds me, forces me to run again. Wade's expression was unreadable. Why? Because I still have the documents, the proof, and as long as I'm alive, I'm a threat. Silence stretched between them. Then Wade turned and walked to the window, staring down at the carriage below. So you came here to hide, he said flatly. Yes. And you figured a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere was a good place to disappear? Yes. You didn't care that you were lying to me, to Noah, to everyone here. Clara's chest ached. I cared, but I didn't have a choice. Wade let out a harsh laugh. There's always a choice, Clara. Or Margaret, or whatever the hell your name is. It's Clara now, she said quietly. I haven't been Margaret in a long time. Wade turned to face her, and the look in his eyes made her stomach twist. It wasn't anger, it was something worse, disappointment. I trusted you, he said quietly. I know. I let you into my home, near my nephew. I know. And you lied. Clara stood, her voice shaking. I didn't have a choice, Wade. If I told you the truth, you never would have hired me. And I needed... She stopped, swallowing hard. I needed somewhere safe, just for a little while. Well, you picked the wrong place. Wade's voice was hard. Because I don't have the money or the manpower to protect you from men like that. Hell, I can barely protect my own land. I'm not asking you to protect me. Good, because I won't. The words landed like stones. Clara nodded slowly, fighting back tears. I'll leave. Tonight. He won't bother you again. She reached for her suitcase, but Wade grabbed her wrist. Not yet. She looked up at him, confused. I want to hear what he has to say first, Wade said, grimly. Then you can go. Before Clara could respond, he turned and walked out, his boots heavy on the stairs. Clara's legs gave out and she sank back onto the bed, her whole body shaking. This was it, the end of the line. She'd known it would happen eventually, she just hadn't expected it to hurt this much. Downstairs, she heard voices, Wade's low and dangerous, Mercer's smooth and controlled. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. This wasn't a friendly conversation. Clara forced herself to stand and crept to the top of the stairs, staying out of sight. Don't care who you are, Wade was saying. You're not welcome here. I understand your suspicion, Mr. Blackthorne. Mercer's voice was infuriatingly calm. But I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here to retrieve something that belongs to me. Margaret Ashcombe doesn't belong to anyone. Margaret Ashcombe is a thief and a liar. She stole confidential documents from my business and has been using them to extort money from innocent investors. Clara's hands clenched into fists. Liar. That true? Wade asked. There was a pause. Then Mercer said smoothly, Ask her yourself, though I doubt you'll get an honest answer. She's quite skilled at deception. I'm asking you. Another pause. The woman you know as Clara Bennett worked for a law firm that represented my colleagues and me, Mercer said. When she was terminated for incompetence, she stole sensitive files and has been attempting to sell them to our competitors ever since. We've been trying to recover our property and bring her to justice for 2 years. Bullshit, Wade said flatly. Clara's breath caught. Mercer's voice sharpened. Excuse me? I said bullshit. If she was just some disgruntled employee, you wouldn't be out here yourself. You'd send the law. The law moves slowly, Mr. Blackthorne, and frankly, I prefer to handle my own affairs. I bet you do. Mercer's tone shifted, became colder. I'm not here to debate with you. I'm here to make you an offer. Not interested? You haven't heard it yet. Don't need to. $10,000. Silence. Clara's heart stopped. 10,000? Mercer repeated. Cash. Delivered within the week. All you have to do is turn Margaret over to me and forget you ever saw her. Wade didn't respond. Clara could barely breathe. $10,000 would save Blackthorn Ranch. It would pay off the debts, repair the fences, hire more men. It would give Wade everything he needed to fight off the railroad investors. All he had to do was hand her over. That's a lot of money, Wade said slowly. It is, more than enough to solve your current financial difficulties, I'd imagine. How do you know about my finances? I make it my business to know things, Mr. Blackthorne. Just as I made it my business to know that Margaret was hiding here. Mercer's voice was smooth as silk. You're a practical man. I can see that. So let's be practical. Margaret Ashcombe means nothing to you. She's been here, what, a month? You owe her nothing. But $10,000? That could change your life. Clara closed her eyes. He was right. Wade would be a fool not to take the money, and she couldn't blame him. Let me think about it, Wade said finally. Relief and heartbreak slammed into Clara simultaneously. Of course, Mercer said. Take your time. I'll be staying at the hotel in Red Hollow for the next few days. When you've made your decision, you know where to find me. I'll show you out. Footsteps, the door opening, the sound of the carriage pulling away. Clara sat frozen at the top of the stairs, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Wade was going to take the money. She knew it, and she couldn't even be angry about it. The front door closed, heavy footsteps crossed the floor below, then Wade's voice, quiet and rough. You can come down now, Clara. She didn't move. Clara. Slowly, she stood and walked down the stairs on legs that felt like water. Wade stood in the middle of the room, his back to her, staring at the cold fireplace. I'm sorry, Clara whispered. For which part? All of it. Wade turned to face her, and the look in his eyes was unreadable. Was any of it true? The boarding house, the cooking experience? That part was true. I did work in a boarding house before Chicago. And the rest? Clara swallowed hard. I really am a good cook. I really do need work. And I really didn't mean to put you or Noah in danger. But you did. I know. Wade dragged a hand down his face. $10,000, Clara. I know. That's more money than I've seen in 5 years. I know. It would save this ranch. Clara's voice broke. I know, Wade, and I don't blame you. If you take it, if you give me to him, I understand. Wade stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, quietly, What did you think I was gonna do? Tie you up and hand you over like a piece of livestock? Clara blinked. What? You think I'd sell a woman to a man like that for money? It's a lot of money. I don't care if it's $1 million. Wade's voice was hard. I don't hand people over to men who scare them. Not for any price. Clara's knees nearly gave out. You're not taking the deal? Hell no, I'm not taking the deal. But the ranch, I'll figure it out. Wade, I said I'll figure it out. His voice cracked and he turned away, running both hands through his hair. Just give me a minute to think. Clara stood there, shaking, unable to process what was happening. He wasn't taking the money, he was choosing her. Why? After a long silence, Wade spoke again, his voice quieter. That man downstairs, Mercer. Everything he said, that was all lies, wasn't it? Yes. The truth is what you told me upstairs. The corruption, the stolen land, the documents. Yes. Wade nodded slowly. You still have them? The documents? Clara hesitated. Yes. Where? Hidden. Somewhere safe. Safe enough that Mercer can't find them? I think so. Wade turned to face her, his expression serious. If what you're saying is true, if these men really are stealing land from ranchers, then those documents could help a lot of people. Clara's throat tightened. They could, but they could also get me killed. Yeah. Wade's jaw clenched. Which is why you're not leaving. What? You heard me? You're staying. Wade, you don't understand. I understand plenty. I understand that you've been running for 2 years because nobody would help you. I understand that you've got proof that could stop men like the ones trying to steal my land. And I understand that if you leave now, Mercer wins. Wade's eyes locked on hers. I'm not letting him win. Clara's voice shook. He'll come back with more men, more threats. He won't stop until he gets what he wants. Then I guess we'd better be ready. Wade, you're staying, Clara. End of discussion. She stared at him, her heart hammering. Why are you doing this? Wade was quiet for a moment, then he said roughly, because. For the first time in 5 years, this house feels like a home again. Because Noah smiles when you're around. Because the men work harder when they've got decent food in their bellies. He paused. And because I'm tired of men like Mercer taking whatever they want from people who can't fight back. Clara's eyes burned with tears. You could lose everything. I'm already losing everything. At least this way I'll lose it fighting for something that matters. A tear slipped down her cheek. Wade looked away, uncomfortable. Don't cry. I hate it when women cry. I'm not crying, Clara said, wiping her face roughly. You're a terrible liar. Despite everything, she almost smiled. Wade cleared his throat. You should get some rest. We'll figure out the details in the morning. Clara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she turned to go, Wade's voice stopped her. Clara? She looked back. Don't run. Not tonight. Not without telling me first. It wasn't a request. It was a plea. I won't, she whispered. And for the first time in 2 years, she meant it. That night, Clara didn't pack her bag. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying Wade's words over and over in her mind. He'd chosen her over $10,000, over saving his ranch, over everything. Why? She didn't understand it, but deep down, in a place she'd thought had gone cold years ago, something warm and fragile began to unfold. Hope. The next morning, Clara woke before dawn, like always. Her body moved on autopilot. Dress, braid her hair, go downstairs, start the fire. But when she walked into the kitchen, she found Wade already there. He was sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, staring at a stack of papers. You're up early? Clara said quietly. Wade glanced up. Couldn't sleep. Me neither. She crossed to the stove and started pulling out ingredients for breakfast. Behind her, she heard Wade shift in his chair. I've been thinking, he said. About? How to keep you safe. Clara's hands stilled. Wade, just listen. Wade's voice was firm. Mercer's not gonna give up. He'll be back. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but soon. And when he comes, he won't come alone. I know. So we need a plan. Clara turned to face him. What kind of plan? Wade leaned back in his chair, his grey eyes serious. The kind that gets those documents of yours into the right hands. Permanently. Clara's breath caught. I mean, we stop running and start fighting. Wade, you don't know what you're saying. These men, they're powerful. They have money, influence, connections, and you have proof. Wade stood, crossing to where she stood. That's more powerful than any of it. Clara shook her head. It's not that simple. I tried going to the authorities before. They didn't listen. Then we'll make them listen. How? Wade was quiet for a moment. Then he said slowly, "There's a federal marshal based out of Cheyenne, named Samuel Garrett. I knew him years back. He's honest, doesn't take bribes. If anyone would listen, it'd be him." Clara's heart was racing. "You really think he'd help?" "I think he'd at least look at what you've got. After that," Wade shrugged, "we'll see." It was the first real plan Clara had heard in 2 years, and it terrified her. "What if it doesn't work?" she asked quietly. Wade met her eyes. "Then at least we tried." Before Clara could respond, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Noah appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Morning." "Morning, sweetheart," Clara said, her voice automatically softening. Noah looked between her and Wade, his expression uncertain. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Wade said. "Go wash up. Breakfast'll be ready soon." Noah hesitated, then nodded and disappeared toward the washroom. Wade turned back to Clara. "We don't tell him. Not yet." "Agreed." "And we keep this quiet from the men too. The fewer people who know, the better." Clara nodded. Wade studied her face for a moment, then said quietly, "You trust me, Clara?" It was a loaded question, and the answer should have been no. She'd learned the hard way not to trust anyone. But when she looked at Wade, really looked at him, she saw something she hadn't seen in a long time. Integrity. "Yes," she whispered. "I trust you." Something flickered in Wade's eyes, something warm and unexpected. Then he cleared his throat and stepped back. "Good. Then let's get to work." Over the next week, the ranch settled into an uneasy routine. Clara cooked, the men worked. Wade spent long hours in his office drafting letters to Marshal Garrett and making plans. And every night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Clara and Wade sat together in the kitchen, talking in low voices about strategy and timing and risk. It was during those quiet conversations that Clara started to see a different side of Wade Blackthorne. He wasn't just cold and guarded, he was careful, thoughtful, and beneath all that ice there was a deep well of grief he'd never dealt with. One night, Clara finally asked the question she'd been avoiding. "What happened to your wife?" Wade's hand stilled on his coffee cup. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said quietly, "Fever. 5 years ago. She was gone in 3 days." Clara's heart ached. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." Wade stared into his cup. "Her name was Anna. She was good. Better than I deserved." "I doubt that." Wade's mouth twisted. "You didn't know me back then." "I know you now." He looked up at her, something raw in his expression. "Do you?" Clara held his gaze. "I'm starting to." The air between them shifted. Wade looked away first. "After she died, I didn't know how to keep going, so I just worked every day, sun up to sundown. Didn't let myself think. Didn't let myself feel." He paused. "And then my brother and his wife died in a stagecoach accident, and suddenly I had Noah, this scared, broken kid who just lost everything, and I didn't know how to help him because I couldn't even help myself." Clara's throat tightened. "You did the best you could." It wasn't enough. He stopped talking, stopped eating, just faded. "And I didn't know how to bring him back." Wade's voice roughened. "And then you showed up. And within a week he was sitting at the table again, smiling, talking, coming back to life." "Wade, you did that, Clara, not me. You." Clara shook her head. "He just needed someone who wasn't drowning in their own grief. Maybe." Wade's eyes met hers. "Or maybe he just needed you." The words hung in the air between them. Clara's heart was beating too fast. "I should get some sleep." she said, standing abruptly. Wade nodded. Yeah, me too. But neither of them moved. Finally, Wade said quietly, Clara? Yeah? I'm glad you're here. It was such a simple thing to say, but the way he said it made Clara's chest ache. Me too, she whispered. Then she turned and walked upstairs before she could say something she'd regret. But that night, lying in bed, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the look in Wade's eyes. And for the first time in years, she let herself imagine what it might be like to stop running, to stay, to build something real. The thought terrified her, but it also made her feel more alive than she had in a long time. The following afternoon, everything changed again. Clara was in the kitchen when she heard shouting from outside. She ran to the window and saw Henry and two other ranch hands standing near the barn staring at something on the ground. Her stomach dropped. She grabbed her shawl and ran outside. When she reached them, she stopped dead. 3 calves lay in the dirt, throats cut clean, blood soaked into the frozen ground. And nailed to the barn door was a piece of paper with 6 words scrawled in dark ink. The cook is next. Clara's blood turned to ice. Henry turned to her, his face grim. You need to tell Wade, now. Clara couldn't move, couldn't breathe. This was Mercer's work. It had to be. He was sending a message. He was coming for her. Clara! Henry's voice was sharp. Go! Now! She turned and ran toward the house, her heart hammering. She found Wade in his office, bent over a ledger. Wade! He looked up, saw her face, and was on his feet instantly. What happened? More calves. Dead. And a note. Wade's jaw clenched. What kind of note? Clara's voice shook. A threat. Against me. Wade grabbed his rifle off the wall and pushed past her. Clara followed him outside, her legs barely holding her up. Wade stared at the dead calves, then at the note nailed to the barn. His face went completely still. Get her inside, he told Henry quietly. Lock the doors. Don't let her out of your sight. Wade, Clara started. Inside. Now. The command in his voice left no room for arguments. Henry took Clara's arm and led her back to the house. She didn't fight him. Through the window, she watched Wade rip the note off the barn door and crumple it in his fist. Then he turned and walked toward the house with a look on his face that Clara had never seen before. Pure, cold rage. Wade stormed into the house like a man ready to burn the world down. Clara stood in the kitchen with Henry still gripping her arm, and when Wade's eyes locked on hers, she saw something that made her stomach twist. Not fear, not even anger. Determination. Henry, get the men together, Wade said, his voice low and tight. Every single one, in the barn, 10 minutes. Henry nodded and headed for the door. Wade, Clara started, not now. You need to listen. I said not now. His voice cracked like a whip and Clara flinched. Wade's jaw clenched. He closed his eyes, took a breath, then looked at her again. I'm sorry. I need to think. Clara's hands were shaking. This is my fault. I should leave before... You're not leaving. Wade, they killed those calves because of me. The note... I know what the damn note said. Wade crossed to her, and for a moment, Clara thought he might grab her shoulders. Instead, he just stood there, close enough that she could see the tension in every line of his face. You think I'm gonna let you walk out of here so Mercer can get his hands on you? You think I'm that kind of man? I think you're the kind of man who protects what's his. And this ranch, Noah, they matter more than I do. That's not your call to make. It should be. Wade's voice dropped. Well, it's not. So stop trying to run and let me handle this. How? What are you going to do? He didn't answer, just turned and walked toward his office. Clara followed. Wade, I'm riding into Red Hollow, he said, pulling a box of ammunition from a drawer. I'm finding Mercer. And I'm telling him if he comes near you or my ranch again, I'll put a bullet in him. Clara's blood went cold. You can't. Watch me. Wade, listen to yourself. You can't just threaten a man like that. He'll have you arrested. Or worse. I don't care. I care. The words burst out of her before she could stop them. Wade froze, his hands still on the ammunition box. Clara's voice shook. I care, Wade. So you can't go into town and do something stupid that'll get you killed or thrown in jail? 'Cause then what happens to Noah? What happens to this ranch? Wade turned to face her slowly. What do you want me to do, Clara? Sit here and wait for him to come back? Wait for him to hurt someone else? No. I want you to be smart. I am being smart. I'm eliminating the threat. By threatening him right back? That's not smart. That's suicide. Wade's hands clenched into fists. Then what would you have me do? Clara took a shaky breath. We go to the marshal, like you said. We give him the documents. We let the law handle it. The law takes time. We don't have time. Then we make time. We lock the doors. We post guards. We keep me out of sight until what? Until Mercer gets tired and goes home? Wade's laugh was bitter. Men like him don't get tired, Clara. They just get meaner. I know that better than anyone. Clara's voice cracked. I've been running from him for 2 years, Wade. I know exactly what he's capable of. But charging into town with a loaded gun isn't going to stop him. It's just going to get you killed. Wade stared at her, his chest heaving. Outside, voices drifted in through the window. The ranch hands gathering in the barn, like Wade had ordered. Finally, Wade said quietly, So what do we do? Clara's throat was tight. We stay together, we stay smart, and we don't give him what he wants, which is fear, panic, mistakes. She met his eyes. He wants us to fall apart, so we don't. Wade was silent for a long moment. Then he exhaled roughly and set the ammunition down. All right, we do it your way, for now. Relief flooded through Clara. Thank you. Wade's voice was hard. But if he comes here again, if he so much as looks at you wrong, all bets are off. Clara nodded. She knew better than to argue. Wade grabbed his hat and headed for the door. I need to talk to the men. You stay inside. Keep the doors locked, and if you see anyone you don't recognize, you come get me. Understood? Understood. Wade paused in the doorway. Clara? Yeah? You were right. About me being stupid. His mouth twitched. Happens more often than I'd like. Despite everything, Clara almost smiled. I'll keep that in mind. He left, and Clara sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. Through the window, she watched Wade walk into the barn. A few minutes later, raised voices drifted across the yard. Not angry, but urgent. The men were asking questions. Wade was giving orders. Clara closed her eyes and tried to breathe. She'd stopped him from doing something reckless. For now. But she knew Wade Blackthorne well enough to know that his patience had limits. And if Mercer pushed him too far, there'd be no stopping what came next. That evening, the ranch felt like a powder keg, waiting for a spark. The men ate dinner in tense silence. Wade barely touched his food. Noah kept glancing between the adults with wide, worried eyes. After the meal, Wade pulled Clara aside. I'm posting guards tonight, he said quietly. 2 men on watch at all times. If anyone comes near this house, we'll know. Clara nodded. What about Noah? He stays close. I already told him not to go outside alone. Did you tell him why? Wade's jaw tightened. I told him we've had some trouble with predators. He doesn't need to know the rest. Clara wanted to argue, but she knew he was right. Noah had been through enough. He didn't need to carry this fear too. All right, she said softly. Wade looked like he wanted to say something else, but footsteps on the stairs stopped him. Noah appeared, already in his nightclothes. Uncle Wade, can Miss Clara read to me tonight? Wade glanced at Clara. That all right with you? Clara forced a smile. Of course. Noah's face lit up, and he grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the stairs. Wade watched them go, his expression unreadable. Upstairs, Clara sat on the edge of Noah's bed while he pulled out a battered copy of Treasure Island. Pa used to read this to me, Noah said quietly, but he never finished it. He died before we got to the end. Clara's heart ached. Do you want to know how it ends? Noah shook his head. Not yet. I'm not ready. Clara understood that. Some stories were too painful to finish. She opened the book and started reading, her voice soft in the quiet room. Noah curled up under the blankets, his eyes drifting shut. Halfway through the chapter, he mumbled, Miss Clara? Yeah, sweetheart? Are you gonna leave? Clara's throat tightened. Why would you think that? Because everyone leaves. His voice was small. Ma and Pa left. The last cook left. Uncle Wade's first wife left. Even though she didn't mean to. Clara set the book down. Noah, look at me. He opened his eyes. I'm not planning on going anywhere, Clara said gently, but sometimes things happen that we can't control, and if I ever have to leave, it won't be because I want to. Do you understand? Noah nodded slowly. Are you in trouble? Clara hesitated. She'd promised herself she wouldn't lie to him. A little bit, she admitted, but your uncle is helping me, and we're going to figure it out. Is that why the calves died? Clara's breath caught. You heard about that? I heard the men talking. Noah's eyes filled with tears. They said someone's trying to hurt you. Oh, sweetheart. I don't want you to get hurt, Miss Clara. You're the only one who... His voice broke. Clara pulled him into a hug, and he clung to her like she was the only solid thing in the world. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered fiercely. I promise. It was a promise she had no right to make. But in that moment, holding this broken, scared child, she meant it with everything she had. When Noah finally fell asleep, Clara slipped out of his room and found Wade standing at the bottom of the stairs. How much did he hear? Wade asked quietly. Enough? Wade's face was grim. I should have been more careful. He's not stupid, Wade. He knows something's wrong. I know. Wade stopped, dragging a hand through his hair. I wanted to protect him from this. You can't protect him from everything. I can try. Clara stepped closer. He's stronger than you think. Wade's eyes met hers. So are you. The words caught her off guard. I'm not strong, Clara said quietly. I've been running for 2 years. That's not strength. That's cowardice. You survived. That takes strength. Or desperation. Wade's mouth twitched. Sometimes they're the same thing. Clara almost smiled. For a moment, they just stood there, close enough that Clara could feel the warmth radiating from him. Then Wade cleared his throat and stepped back. You should get some sleep. Tomorrow's gonna be a long day. What happens tomorrow? I'm sending a telegram to Marshal Garrett, asking him to come out here. If he agrees, we'll hand over the documents and let him take it from there. Clara's heart jumped. And if he doesn't agree? Then we figure out plan B. What's plan B? Wade's smile was grim. I'm still working on that part. Despite everything, Clara felt a flicker of hope. This might actually work. Thank you, she said softly, for not giving up on me. Wade's expression softened. You make it sound like I had a choice. You did. You could have taken Mercer's money. You could have handed me over. Yeah, I could have. Wade held her gaze. But then I'd have to live with myself. And I'm already carrying enough regrets. Clara's chest ached. Before she could respond, Wade turned and headed for the door. Get some rest, Clara. We'll talk more in the morning. He left, and Clara stood alone in the dark hallway, her heart beating too fast. She was falling for him, she knew it, had known it for days, maybe weeks, and it terrified her. 'Cause loving someone meant giving them the power to destroy you. And Clara had been destroyed enough already. But as she climbed the stairs to her room, she couldn't deny the truth anymore. Wade Blackthorne had gotten under her skin, and she didn't know how to get him out. The next morning, Wade rode into Red Hollow alone. Clara wanted to go with him, but he refused. "You stay here where it's safe," he said firmly. "I'll be back by noon." Clara watched him ride away, her stomach in knots. The hours dragged. She cooked, she cleaned, she tried to keep busy, but every sound made her jump. Every shadow made her heart race. Henry noticed. "He'll be fine," the old cowboy said gruffly. "Wade's tougher than he looks." "It's not Wade I'm worried about." Henry raised an eyebrow. "You think Mercer's gonna try something in broad daylight?" "I think Mercer doesn't care about daylight." Henry grunted. "Fair point." At 11:30, Noah wandered into the kitchen, looking lost. "Can I help with lunch?" he asked quietly. Clara smiled. "Of course. You can peel the potatoes." They worked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Noah said, "Miss Clara, do you like Uncle Wade?" Clara nearly dropped her knife. "What kind of question is that?" Noah shrugged. "I just wondered. He looks at you funny sometimes." "Funny how?" "Like he's trying to figure something out, but also, like..." Noah scrunched up his face, thinking, like he's happy, but doesn't want to be. Clara's heart squeezed. "Your uncle's been through a lot, Noah. It's hard for him to let himself feel happy." "Why?" "Because when you've lost people you love, being happy feels like betraying them." Noah was quiet for a moment, then he said softly, "Do you think Ma and Pa would want me to be sad forever?" Clara set down her knife and crouched beside him. "No, sweetheart. I think they'd want you to live, to laugh, to find joy wherever you can." "Then why can't Uncle Wade do that?" "He's trying. It just takes time." Noah looked up at her with those solemn grey eyes. "I think you make him happy, Miss Clara, even if he doesn't say it." Clara's throat was too tight to respond. Before she could find the words, hoofbeats sounded outside. Wade was back. Clara and Noah rushed to the window. Wade dismounted, his face grim, and headed straight for the house. Clara met him at the door. "What did Garrett say?" Wade pulled a folded telegram from his pocket and handed it to her. Clara unfolded it with shaking hands. "Will arrive Red Hollow December 18th. Stop. Prepare all evidence. Stop. Garrett." Clara looked up, her heart pounding. "He's coming. 3 days from now." That's good. That's really good." Wade nodded, but his expression was still tense. "What is it?" Clara asked. Wade glanced at Noah. "Not here. Office. Now." Clara followed him, dread coiling in her stomach. Wade closed the door behind them and turned to face her. "Mercer knows." Clara's blood went cold. "Knows what?" "That I sent a telegram to Garrett. I don't know how, but he knows." "How do you know he knows?" Wade pulled another piece of paper from his pocket. "This was waiting for me at the telegraph office." Clara took it with trembling hands. "Mistakes have consequences, Mr. Blackthorne, for you and everyone you care about." There was no signature, but they both knew who'd sent it. Clara sank into a chair. "He's watching us." "Looks like it." "Wade, if he knows the marshal's coming, he'll do something before Garrett arrives. He has to." "I know. So what do we do?" Wade was quiet for a long moment, then he said, "We give him what he wants." Clara's head snapped up. "What?" "Not you," Wade said quickly. "The documents. Or at least, that's what we tell him." Clara stared at him. I don't understand. Wade leaned against the desk. We send Mercer a message. Tell him you're willing to turn over the documents in exchange for him leaving the ranch alone. He'll never believe that. He will, if we make it convincing. We set up a meeting, somewhere public, we bring the documents or something that looks like them, and when he shows up, the marshal arrests him. Wade nodded. Exactly. Clara's mind was racing. That's actually not a terrible plan. Don't sound so surprised. But there's a problem. Garrett won't be here for 3 days. We can't stall Mercer that long. We don't have to. We tell Mercer we'll meet him the night before Garrett arrives. That gives us time to prepare, and it keeps Mercer from doing anything reckless in the meantime. Clara chewed her lip. What if he doesn't wait? What if he just comes here and takes what he wants by force? Then we'll be ready. Wade's voice was hard. I've got 6 armed men on this ranch, Clara. We're not defenseless. Mercer has money. He can hire more men than you have. Maybe. But this is my land. I know every inch of it. He doesn't. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this could go wrong, but she was out of options and out of time. All right, she said quietly. We do it your way. Wade nodded. I'll send the message this afternoon. What do we tell the men? The truth? Or close enough? They deserve to know what they're walking into. Clara stood, her legs shaky. Wade? Yeah? If this goes wrong, if something happens to you or Noah or anyone because of me, it won't. But if it does, Wade crossed to her and gripped her shoulders. It won't, Clara. I'm not gonna let that happen. She wanted to believe him, but she'd learned the hard way that good intentions didn't stop bad things from happening. Still, looking into Wade's eyes, she saw something that steadied her. Conviction. This man didn't make promises lightly, and he didn't break them. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. Wade's hands tightened on her shoulders for just a moment. Then he let go and stepped back. Get some rest, he said quietly. Next few days are gonna be rough. Clara nodded and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned back. Wade? Yeah? Thank you for fighting for me. Wade's expression softened. Always. The word hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Then Clara slipped out and closed the door behind her. That night, Wade gathered the men in the barn. Clara stood in the shadows, listening. I'm not gonna lie to you, Wade said, his voice carrying across the space. We've got trouble. Big trouble. And it's centered around Miss Clara. The men shifted, glancing at each other. There's a man named Vincent Mercer who wants her gone, Wade continued. He's been threatening the ranch, killing livestock, trying to scare us, and in 3 days we're gonna put an end to it. Henry spoke up. How? We're setting a trap. Mercer thinks he's getting what he wants, but what he's really getting is a federal marshal and a one-way trip to prison. One of the younger hands, a kid named Tommy, frowned. What if he brings men? Then we'll be ready. I need volunteers, men willing to stand with me when this goes down. It might get dangerous. I won't lie about that. So if any of you want out, now's the time to say so. No hard feelings. Silence. Then Henry stepped forward. I'm in. Tommy nodded. Me too. One by one, the rest of the men stepped forward. Every single one. Wade's throat worked. All right then, here's the plan. Clara listened as Wade laid it out. The meeting location, the timing, the backup plan if things went sideways. It was solid. As solid as it could be. But Clara couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something, that Mercer was one step ahead. After the meeting broke up, Clara slipped back to the house. She found Noah waiting for her in the kitchen. I heard, he said quietly. Clara's heart sank. How much? Enough. Noah looked up at her with those 2 old eyes. You're in danger. And Uncle Wade's trying to help you. Clara sank into a chair. Yeah. Is the Batman gonna come here? We're not gonna let him. Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I'm scared, Miss Clara. Clara pulled him into a hug. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. They sat like that for a long time, holding on to each other in the dark. When Noah finally went to bed, Clara stayed in the kitchen, staring at nothing. She should leave, she knew that. Should disappear before the meeting ever happened. It would be safer for everyone. But when she thought about walking away, about never seeing Wade or Noah again, something inside her rebelled. She was tired of running, tired of letting fear make her decisions, and for the first time in 2 years, she had people worth fighting for. So she'd stay, and she'd fight, and if it all went to hell, at least she'd go down swinging. The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Wade drilled the men, checked weapons, mapped out positions. Clara cooked and cleaned and tried to keep Noah distracted. But underneath it all, tension simmered like a pot about to boil over. On the morning of the third day, Wade sent the message to Mercer, "We'll exchange documents for guarantee of safety. Tonight, Red Hollow Church, 8 o'clock, come alone." The response came back within an hour. Agreed. "Don't disappoint me, Margaret." Clara's hands shook as she read it. "He's coming," she whispered. Wade nodded grimly. "Yeah, he is." That afternoon, Marshal Garrett arrived. He was a tall man with a weathered face and sharp eyes. He listened to Clara's story without interrupting, studied the documents she'd hidden for 2 years, and then looked at Wade. "This is enough," he said quietly. "More than enough. If what she's saying is true, we can bring down 6 men with this." "It's true," Clara said firmly. Garrett nodded. "Then we do this tonight. I'll be in position before Mercer arrives. When he shows up, I'll make the arrest." "What if he doesn't come alone?" Wade asked. "Then we adapt." It wasn't the most reassuring answer, but it was all they had. As the sun started to set, the group prepared to leave. Clara changed into her warmest dress and wrapped a shawl around her shoulders. When she came downstairs, Wade was waiting. He looked at her for a long moment, then he said quietly, "You don't have to do this. We can still call it off." Clara shook her head. "No, we end this tonight." Wade nodded. "All right, but you stay close to me. Understood?" "Understood." They rode into town in tense silence. The church sat on the edge of Red Hollow, a small wooden building with a crooked steeple. Garrett positioned his men around the perimeter. Wade and Clara went inside. The church was cold and dark. Moonlight filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the pews. Clara stood at the front, the documents clutched in her hands. Wade stood beside her, his rifle ready. "What time is it?" Clara whispered. 5 till. Her heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe, and then, right on schedule, the door opened. Vincent Mercer stepped inside, alone, just as he'd promised. He smiled when he saw Clara. "Margaret, it's been too long." Clara's voice was steady. "I have what you want." "Do you now?" Mercer walked slowly down the aisle, his eyes never leaving her face. "And why the sudden change of heart?" "I'm tired, Vincent, tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder." "So you're just giving up? How disappointing." "I'm being practical." Mercer laughed. "You were never practical, Margaret. That's what got you into this mess in the first place." He reached the front and held out his hand. "Let me see them." Clara hesitated. Wade shifted beside her. Mercer's eyes flicked to Wade. "Still here, Mr. Blackthorne? I'm impressed. Most men would have taken my money and run by now." "I'm not most men," Wade said flatly. "Clearly." Mercer's smile widened. "Margaret, the documents. Now." Clara started to hand them over. And that's when everything went wrong. The church door slammed open. 4 armed men rushed inside. Wade raised his rifle, but one of them fired first. The shot echoed through the church, deafening. Wade went down, Clara screamed, and Vincent Mercer smiled. Clara's scream tore through the church as Wade hit the ground. Blood bloomed across his shoulder, dark and spreading fast. Wade! She tried to reach him, but Mercer grabbed her arm and yanked her back. Let go of me! Clara twisted, fighting, but his grip was iron. You really thought I'd come alone? Mercer's voice was amused. Margaret, I expected better from you. Outside, gunfire erupted. Shouts, the sound of horses scattering. Garrett and his men were pinned down. One of Mercer's hired guns kicked Wade's rifle away and pressed a boot into his wounded shoulder. Wade's jaw clenched, but he didn't make a sound. Stop it! Clara screamed. Leave him alone! Mercer nodded, and the man stepped back. Wade pushed himself up on his good arm, his face white with pain. Blood soaked through his shirt, dripping onto the church floor. You all right? He rasped, looking at Clara. Am I all right? Clara's voice cracked. You're the one who got shot. I've had worse. That's not comforting, Mercer laughed. How touching. The criminal and her cowboy. He gestured to one of his men. Get the documents. The man snatched the papers from Clara's hands. Mercer flipped through them quickly, his expression tightening. Then he threw them on the floor. These are copies, he said coldly. Clara's heart stopped. Where are the originals, Margaret? She didn't answer. Mercer backhanded her across the face. Clara's head snapped to the side, pain exploding across her cheek. Wade surged to his feet with a roar, but 2 men slammed him back down. He fought anyway, bleeding and swinging with his good arm until one of them cracked a pistol across his skull. Wade crumpled. Wade! Clara tried to reach him again, but Mercer's hand fisted in her hair, jerking her back. The originals, Mercer repeated, his voice deadly quiet. Where? Clara's face throbbed. Her vision swam, but she met his eyes and smiled through bloody teeth. Somewhere you'll never find them. Mercer's expression went flat. Then I suppose I don't need him anymore. He nodded at Wade. One of the hired guns raised his pistol. No, Clara screamed. Wait, I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything, just don't. Too late. The gun fired. Clara's world shattered. But the bullet didn't hit Wade, it hit the man. Holding the gun, he dropped like a stone. Suddenly, the church exploded with movement. Henry and the ranch hands burst through the side door, rifles blazing. Mercer's men scattered, returning fire. Marshal Garrett crashed through the front entrance with 3 deputies. In the chaos, Mercer dragged Clara toward the back exit. She fought, kicked, bit his hand hard enough to draw blood. He cursed and shoved her away. Clara stumbled, hit the floor hard. When she looked up, Mercer was gone, and Wade was crawling toward her, his face twisted with pain. Clara, don't move! She scrambled to him. You're hurt. You need to... I'm fine. You are not fine, you stubborn... Wade grabbed her face with his good hand and looked at her fiercely. Are you hurt? I don't care. Are you hurt? Clara's throat closed. No. Wade exhaled, some of the tension leaving his body. Then he collapsed forward. Clara caught him. Wade! Wade, stay with me. Not going anywhere, he mumbled. Just need a minute. You need a doctor. We don't have a doctor. Then we're getting one. The gunfire was dying down. Garrett had subdued 2 of Mercer's men. The others were either dead or running. Henry appeared at Clara's side, his face grim. How bad? Bad enough, Clara said, her voice shaking. Help me get him outside. Together, they hauled Wade to his feet. He swayed, nearly went down again, but Henry caught him. Easy, boss. We got you. They got him outside and laid him in the back of a wagon. Clara climbed in beside him, pressing her shawl against the wound. Wade's eyes were half closed. Mercer? Gone, Garrett said, appearing beside the wagon. But we'll find him. He can't have gone far. The hell he can't, Wade muttered. Clara's hands were covered in blood. Too much blood. We need to get him back to the ranch, she said urgently. Now. The ride back was the longest of Clara's life. Wade drifted in and out of consciousness. His skin was clammy, his breathing shallow. Clara kept pressure on the wound and talked to him, refusing to let him slip away. Stay with me, Wade. Come on. You've survived worse, remember? You said so yourself. Liar, he mumbled. What? That was the worst I've had. Despite everything, Clara almost laughed. Then you need to be more careful. Probably. His eyes closed again. Wade? Wade? Still here, he breathed. Stop yelling. When they reached the ranch, Henry sent Tommy riding hell for leather to fetch the doctor from the next town over. They carried Wade inside and laid him on the kitchen table. Clara had never felt more helpless in her life. She didn't know how to treat a gunshot wound, didn't know if the bullet was still in there or if it had gone clean through. All she could do was keep pressure on it and pray. Noah appeared in the doorway, his face white. Uncle Wade? He's all right, sweetheart, Clara lied. But I need you to go upstairs, okay? Can you do that for me? Noah shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I want to stay. Noah, please. Clara looked at the boy's devastated expression and couldn't say no. All right, but stay back. Don't get in the way. Noah nodded and pressed himself into the corner, watching with terrified eyes. Henry helped Clara cut away Wade's shirt. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, just below the collarbone. It had missed the bone, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. Clara packed the wound with clean cloth and tied it tight. Wade's eyes opened. You know what you're doing? No, Clara admitted. Great. Shut up and let me work. His mouth twitched. Yes, ma'am. The doctor arrived 2 hours later. An older man with a grey beard and steady hands. He took one look at Wade and grunted. You're lucky. Another inch to the left and you'd be dead. Feels lucky, Wade muttered. The doctor cleaned the wound properly, stitched it closed, and wrapped Wade's shoulder in fresh bandages. No heavy lifting, he said sternly. No riding, no working. You rest for at least 2 weeks or that shoulder won't heal right. Wade nodded, but Clara could already see the argument forming in his eyes. I'll make sure he listens, she said firmly. The doctor looked at her. Good luck with that. After he left, Clara sat beside Wade's bed and finally let herself fall apart. She'd almost lost him. Another second, another inch, and he'd be gone. The thought made her sick. Wade's good hand found hers. Hey, I'm all right. You got shot because of me. I got shot because Mercer's a snake. That's not on you. If I hadn't come here, then I'd still be drowning in debt with no hope and a nephew who wouldn't talk. Wade squeezed her hand. You didn't bring trouble, Clara. You brought life. Her throat was too tight to respond. Wade's thumb brushed across her knuckles. We got the documents to Garrett. That's what matters. He'll use them, make arrests, stop these men from hurting anyone else. Mercer got away. Not for long. You don't know that. I know Garrett. He's like a dog with a bone. He won't stop till he's got him. Clara wanted to believe that, but she'd spent too long being hunted to trust in easy endings. You should rest, she said softly. So should you. I will. In a bit. Wade's eyes searched her face. Clara? Yeah? Thank you. For not leaving. Clara's vision blurred. Where else would I go? Wade smiled faintly. Anywhere safer than here. Safer's overrated. He laughed, then winced. Don't make me laugh. Hurts. Then stop being charming. Can't help it. Clara shook her head, but she was smiling through tears. Wade's eyes drifted shut. Within minutes, he was asleep. Clara sat there for a long time, just watching him breathe. She'd come to this ranch to hide, to survive. But somewhere along the way, it had become more than that. This place, these people, they mattered. And she'd fight to protect them, even if it killed her. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended quiet. Wade slept most of the time, his body fighting off fever and exhaustion. Clara barely left his side. She changed his bandages, forced broth down his throat, kept watch while he slept. Noah helped, fetching water and blankets and sitting quietly in the corner when Wade was awake. The ranch hands took over the work without complaint. Henry ran things with quiet efficiency, making sure the cattle were fed and the fences mended. And through it all, Clara waited for the other shoe to drop, 'cause Mercer was still out there. And men like him didn't give up. On the fourth day, Wade woke fully lucid for the first time. "How long was I out?" he asked, his voice rough. 3 days, Clara said, setting down the book she'd been reading. Wade tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. "Hell. Easy." Clara helped him prop up against the pillows. "You're not ready to move yet." "I feel like I got trampled by a horse." "You got shot. It's basically the same thing." Wade's mouth twitched. "How's the ranch?" "Running fine. Henry's got everything under control." "And Noah?" "Scared, but okay." Wade exhaled slowly. "I need to talk to him." "Later, when you're stronger." "Clara?" "Later," she said firmly. Wade looked like he wanted to argue, but he was too tired. His eyes found hers. "You look exhausted." "I'm fine." "Liar." "Takes one to know one." Wade almost smiled. Then his expression grew serious. "Any word on Mercer?" Clara's stomach tightened. "No?" "Garrett's still looking?" "As far as I know." Wade's jaw clenched. "He'll come back, Clara. You know that." "I know." "We need to be ready. You need to heal first." "I can heal and plan at the same time." Clara shook her head. "You're impossible." "You say that like it's news." Despite everything, she smiled. Wade caught her hand. "I mean it though. We can't let our guard down. Not yet." "I know," Clara said quietly. "But right now, you need rest more than you need a plan." Wade looked like he wanted to argue, but exhaustion won. He fell asleep, still holding her hand. Clara sat there until her back ached and her eyes burned. Then she carefully extracted her hand and went downstairs. Henry was in the kitchen, drinking coffee. "How's he doing?" the old cowboy asked. "Better. Still stubborn." Henry chuckled. "That's Wade." Clara poured herself a cup and sat down heavily. "Any news from town?" "Marshall sent word this morning. They tracked Mercer to the rail station. He bought a ticket east." Clara's heart jumped. "He's leaving?" "Looks like it. Garrett thinks he's running scared, knows the law's closing in." Relief flooded through Clara. "So it's over." Henry's expression was cautious. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just regrouping." Clara's relief evaporated. "You think he'll come back?" "Men like that always do. Eventually." Clara stared into her coffee, feeling the weight of it all settle back on her shoulders. She'd thought the church would be the end. But maybe there was no end. Maybe she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. "You all right, Miss Clara?" She looked up. Henry was watching her with concern. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought if we got the documents to Garrett, if we exposed Mercer, everything would be okay. But it's not, is it?" Henry was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Nothing's ever really over, Miss Clara. Life don't work that way. But that don't mean you stop fighting." "I'm tired of fighting." "I know, but you're still here, still standing. That counts for something." Clara's throat tightened. "Does it?" "Ask Wade, he'll tell you." Clara looked toward the stairs. He almost died because of me, Henry. He almost died because he chose to stand with you. That's different. Is it? Yeah, it is. Henry stood and set his cup in the basin. Wade's been half dead for 5 years, Miss Clara, walking around like a ghost. But you brought him back, made him feel something again. That's worth a bullet wound. I don't think he'd agree. Henry smiled. Then you don't know him as well as you think. He left, and Clara sat alone in the quiet kitchen. Maybe Henry was right. Maybe this was worth fighting for. But she was so tired. Tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being afraid. She wanted peace. She wanted safety. She wanted a life where she didn't have to look over her shoulder every 5 minutes. But most of all, she realized she wanted Wade. The thought hit her like a punch to the chest. She was in love with him. Not the convenient kind of love that happened because he was there and she was lonely, the deep, terrifying kind that changed everything. The kind that made you want to stay even when leaving was safer. Clara put her head in her hands and tried to breathe. This was a mistake. Loving someone meant giving them power to hurt you. And she'd been hurt enough, but even as she thought it, she knew it was too late. She'd already fallen, and there was no climbing back out. That evening, Noah finally worked up the courage to visit Wade. Clara watched from the doorway as the boy sat carefully on the edge of the bed. "Hey kid," Wade said softly. "Hi, Uncle Wade. You holding up all right?" Noah nodded, but his eyes were red. Wade's expression gentled. "Come here." Noah curled up carefully against Wade's good side and Wade wrapped his arm around him. "I thought you were gonna die," Noah whispered. "I'm too stubborn to die." "That's what Miss Clara said." Wade smiled. "She's a smart woman." They sat in silence for a while. Then Noah said, "Are you gonna marry her?" Wade nearly choked. "What? Miss Clara, are you gonna marry her?" "That's... Kid, where's this coming from?" Noah shrugged. "You look at her like Pa used to look at Ma, and she looks at you the same way?" Wade's face went red. We're not." "You should," Noah said simply. "She makes you happy, and she's nice, and she makes good biscuits." Despite everything, Wade laughed. "Those are all good reasons." "So you'll ask her?" "It's not that simple, Noah." "Why not?" Wade was quiet for a long moment. "Because sometimes people have things in their past that make it hard to move forward. Like Ma and Pa dying. Yeah, like that." Noah thought about this. "But you said we're supposed to keep living, even when it hurts." Wade's throat worked. "I did say that, didn't I? So why can't you?" Wade didn't have an answer. Noah hugged him tighter. "I think you should ask her, Uncle Wade, before she leaves. She's not leaving. You don't know that." And that, Wade realized, was the problem. He didn't know. Clara had stayed through the danger, through the gunfight, through his injury. But what about after, when things settled down and life went back to normal? Would she still want to be here? Or would she disappear one morning, leaving nothing but an empty room and a hole in his chest? The thought made him sick. "I'll think about it," Wade told Noah quietly. "You promise?" "Yeah, kid, I promise." Noah fell asleep curled against him and Wade stared at the ceiling, his mind racing. He told himself he was helping Clara because it was the right thing to do. Because she needed protection and he had the means to provide it. But that was a lie. He was helping her because somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being just a cook, she'd become essential. The thought of losing her was worse than the bullet wound, worse than the debt, worse than anything. And that terrified him. Because love meant vulnerability. And Wade Blackthorne had sworn he'd never be vulnerable again. But here he was, bleeding and broken and completely at the mercy of a woman who could destroy him with a single word. He was an idiot. But he was an idiot in love. And there wasn't a damn thing he could do about it. A week after the shooting, Wade was finally strong enough to get out of bed. Clara tried to make him stay down, but he was done being an invalid. "I'm fine," he insisted, pushing himself upright. "You are not fine. You were shot. A week ago." "That's not long enough." Wade stood, swayed slightly, then steadied himself. "See? Fine." Clara crossed her arms. "If you tear those stitches, I'm not fixing them." "Yes, you will." "I will not." "You're too kind to let me bleed out." "Don't tempt me." Wade grinned, and Clara's resolve crumbled. She helped him down the stairs, cursing under her breath the whole way. The ranch hands cheered when they saw him. "About time, boss," Tommy called. Wade waved them off, embarrassed, but Clara could see the relief in their faces. Wade was the glue holding this place together. Without him, it would have fallen apart. That afternoon, Marshal Garrett returned. He had news. "We arrested 12 men," he said, spreading documents across Wade's desk. "Bank executives, railroad investors, land speculators, all connected to the scheme Miss Ashcombe uncovered." Clara's heart raced. "And Mercer?" Garrett's expression darkened. "Still at large, but we've got warrants out." "He won't stay hidden long." "That's what you said last time," Clara said quietly. "I know, but this time is different. We've frozen his assets, seized his properties. He's got nowhere to run and no money to run with." Wade leaned back in his chair, wincing. "So we just wait? For now?" "Yes." Clara's stomach twisted. "How long?" "Could be days, could be weeks, but we'll get him, Miss Ashcombe, I promise you that." Clara wanted to believe him, but she'd learned not to trust promises. After Garrett left, Wade found her standing on the porch, staring out at the darkening hills. "You all right?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Clara admitted. "I thought this would feel different, like relief, but all I feel is tired." Wade stepped closer. "It's not over yet, that's why." "Will it ever be over?" "Yeah, it will." "You don't know that." "No," Wade agreed. "But I choose to believe it anyway." Clara looked at him. "How do you do that? After everything you've lost, how do you still have hope?" Wade was quiet for a long moment, then he said, "Because the alternative is giving up, and I'm too stubborn for that." Despite everything, Clara smiled. Wade's expression grew serious. "Clara, there's something I need to say." Her heart stuttered. "What?" He stopped, frustrated. I'm not good at this." "At what?" "Talking about," he gestured vaguely. "Feelings." Clara's breath caught. "Wade, just let me finish." He took a breath. "When you showed up here, I thought you were just another person passing through. Someone who'd work for a while and then disappear like everyone else, but you didn't. You stayed, even when it got dangerous, even when you had every reason to run." Clara's throat was tight. "Wade, and somewhere along the way you stopped being just a cook. You became..." He stopped, searching for words. "You became important. To Noah, to the ranch, to me." Tears burned Clara's eyes. "Don't. Why not?" "Because I can't." Her voice cracked. "I can't promise I'll stay, Wade. I don't know what's going to happen. If Mercer comes back, if things go wrong, I might have to run again. And I won't let you care about me when I might just disappear." Wade stepped closer. "What if I already care?" Clara's heart broke. "Then you're a fool." "Probably." Wade reached out and gently touched her face, his thumb brushing away a tear. "But I'd rather be a fool in love than a wise man alone." Clara's breath hitched. "You don't mean that." "Yes, I do." "Wade, I love you, Clara." The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep. I didn't mean to, didn't want to, but I do, and I'm done pretending I don't. Clara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. He loved her. Wade Blackthorne, cold, guarded, broken Wade, loved her. Say something, Wade said, quietly. Clara's voice shook. I don't deserve you. That's not for you to decide. I've lied to you, put you in danger, almost got you killed, and I'd do it all again. Wade's hand tightened on her face. So, stop trying to push me away and just let me love you. Clara's tears spilled over. I don't know how. Then we'll figure it out together. He kissed her, not rough like Clara had imagined, gentle, careful, like she was something precious. And Clara, who'd spent 2 years convinced she was broken beyond repair, kissed him back and felt something inside her finally start to heal. When they finally pulled apart, Wade rested his forehead against hers. Stay, he whispered, please. And Clara, who'd spent her whole life running, finally found the courage to say, okay. The word hung in the air between them like something fragile and new. Okay. Such a small word. But it changed everything. Wade pulled back slightly, searching her face. You mean it? Clara's hands were shaking. I'm terrified. And I don't know if this is the right choice, and there's a very good chance I'll mess this up completely. That's not a no. No, Clara whispered. It's not a no. Wade's smile was slow and genuine, the kind that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. Good enough for me. He kissed her again, and this time Clara let herself fall into it, without holding back. Let herself believe just for a moment that maybe she deserved this, deserved him. When they finally broke apart, Wade winced and touched his shoulder. You tore your stitches, didn't you? Clara said. Probably. You're impossible. You already said that. It bears repeating. Wade grinned and Clara shook her head, but she was smiling too. That night, Clara lay in bed unable to sleep, replaying Wade's words over and over. I love you. Nobody had said that to her in years. And even when they had, it hadn't felt like this, hadn't felt real. But Wade meant it, she could see it in his eyes, hear it in his voice, and that scared her more than anything Mercer had ever done. Because this was the kind of thing you could lose, the kind of thing that could be ripped away in an instant, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. Clara had survived losing everything once before. She didn't know if she could do it again, but as she stared at the ceiling in the dark, she realized something. She didn't want to run anymore. She was tired of being afraid, tired of letting fear make her decisions, and for the first time in 2 years, she had something worth staying for. So she'd stay, and she'd fight for it, even if it killed her. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. Wade healed slowly, growing stronger each day. The ranch work continued. Noah started smiling more, laughing at Clara's terrible jokes while they cooked together. And Clara and Wade danced around each other like teenagers, stealing glances across the kitchen, finding excuses to touch hands when nobody was looking. It was terrifying and wonderful and completely new. One evening, Clara was washing dishes when Wade came up behind her and wrapped his good arm around her waist. She jumped. You scared me. Sorry. But he didn't let go. Clara leaned back against him, her hands still in the soapy water. Your shoulder is fine. You're supposed to be resting. I'm tired of resting. Clara smiled despite herself. The doctor said 2 weeks. The doctor's not here. Wade. He turned her around and kissed her, and Clara forgot what she was going to say. When they broke apart, Wade's eyes were soft. I've been thinking. That's dangerous. He ignored that. When this is all over, when Mercer's caught and things settle down, I want to do this right. Clara's heart stuttered. Do what right? Wade's thumb traced circles on her hip. This. Us. I want to court you properly. Take you into town for dinner. Maybe even dancing, if my shoulder holds up. Clara's throat was tight. Wade Blackthorn, are you asking me on a date? I guess I am. We live in the same house, we see each other every day. Doesn't count. Why not? Because I want to do something special. Something that's just for you. Wade's expression was serious. You deserve that, Clara. You deserve someone who makes an effort, who shows up, who doesn't take you for granted. Clara's eyes burned. You already do all those things? Not enough. Wade, let me do this, he said quietly. Please. Clara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Wade kissed her forehead. Good. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. They sprang apart like guilty children. Noah stood in the doorway, grinning. I knew it. Clara's face went hot. Noah? You're together. I knew it. Noah looked delighted. Does this mean you're getting married? Kid, Wade started. Because if you are, can I help plan the wedding? And can we have cake, a really big one? Clara covered her face with her hands. Oh, my word. Wade looked torn between embarrassment and amusement. It's not yet, Noah said knowingly. But you will. I can tell. Then he grabbed a biscuit from the counter and ran off before either of them could respond. Clara and Wade looked at each other. And then they both started laughing. Well, Wade said, so much for keeping it quiet. The whole ranch probably knows by now. Probably. Clara shook her head, but she was smiling. Your nephew has no subtlety whatsoever. Wonder where he gets that from? Definitely not you. You're the picture of restraint. Wade pulled her close again. Not when it comes to you. And he kissed her like he meant it. But the peace didn't last. 3 days later, a telegram arrived. Wade opened it, read it, and his face went white. What is it? Clara asked. He handed it to her without a word. Mercer spotted in Cheyenne. Stop. Heading your direction. Stop. Be ready. Stop. Garrett. Clara's blood turned to ice. He was coming back. After everything, after the arrests, after the warrants, after losing his money and his power, Mercer was still coming for her. He won't stop, Clara whispered. Not until he gets what he wants. Wade's jaw was tight. Then we make sure he doesn't get it. Wade, I'm not letting him take you, Clara. I don't care what it takes. He'll have men, guns. So will we. Wade turned to Henry, who'd been standing quietly by the door. Round up the men. I want everyone armed. Double the watch. Nobody sleeps until this is over. Henry nodded and left. Clara grabbed Wade's arm. This is insane. We should leave, go somewhere he can't find us. And then what? Run for the rest of our lives? Wade shook his head. No, we end this here. Now. You could die. I could die tomorrow falling off a horse. That doesn't mean I stop riding. Wade's voice softened. I'm not running, Clara, and neither are you. Clara wanted to argue, wanted to scream at him that he was being stupid and reckless and throwing his life away for someone who wasn't worth it. But the look in his eyes stopped her. He wasn't doing this out of obligation or duty. He was doing it because he loved her. And he decided she was worth fighting for. Clara's vision blurred. I can't lose you. You won't. You don't know that. Wade pulled her close. Then we'd better make damn sure we win. The ranch turned into a fortress overnight. Rifles were loaded and distributed. Lookouts were posted on every approach. The women and children from neighboring ranches were brought in and secured in the cellar. Noah was furious about being sent down there with them, but Wade was firm. This isn't a discussion, kid. You stay down there until I come get you. Understood? Noah's eyes filled with tears. But what if... I'll be fine. You don't know that. Wade crouched down to Noah's level. Listen to me. I need to know you're safe. If I'm worried about you, I can't focus on what needs to be done. So you're gonna go down there, and you're gonna be brave, and you're gonna wait for me. Can you do that? Noah's lip trembled. What if you don't come back? Wade's voice caught. Then you take care of Miss Clara for me, deal? Noah threw his arms around Wade's neck and held on tight. Wade hugged him back, his eyes closed. When they finally pulled apart, Wade ruffled Noah's hair. Go on, I'll see you soon. Noah nodded and headed for the cellar stairs, looking back once before disappearing below. Clara's heart was breaking. Wade, don't, he said quietly. If you start, I won't be able to do this. Clara nodded, swallowing her fear. They waited through the night and into the next day, and then, just as the sun was setting, the lookout shouted, Riders! Coming from the east! Wade grabbed his rifle. How many? 6, maybe 7. Wade looked at Clara. Get inside. Lock the doors. Don't come out until I tell you. I'm staying with you. Clara. I'm not hiding while you fight my battles. Her voice was firm. This is my fight, Wade. Let me stand in it. Wade looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Fine, he said, but you stay behind me, and if things go bad, you run. Promise me. I promise. It was a lie, and they both knew it. The riders came into view as the sun touched the horizon. 7 men on horseback, silhouetted against the dying light, and in the center, sitting tall and confident, was Vincent Mercer. They stopped 50 yards from the house. Wade stepped out onto the porch, rifle in hand. That's far enough. Mercer smiled. Mr. Blackthorne? Still breathing, I see. How disappointing. What do you want, Mercer? What I've always wanted. Margaret, Ashcombe, and the documents she stole from me. She didn't steal anything. She exposed you. Semantics. Mercer's smile widened. Here's how this is going to work. You hand her over along with the original documents and I ride away. No one else gets hurt. And if I refuse? Mercer gestured to his men. Then we take her by force. And anyone who gets in our way dies. Wade's rifle didn't waver. Then I guess people are gonna die. Don't be a fool, Blackthorne. You're outnumbered. Outgunned. You can't win this. Maybe not, but I can make sure you don't either. Mercer's expression hardened. Last chance. Give her to me. And walk away. Wade's answer was to raise his rifle. Everything happened at once. Mercer's men reached for their guns. Shots rang out from the barn. Henry and the ranch hands opening fire. Mercer's men scattered, returning fire. Wade pulled Clara down behind the porch railing. Bullets tore through the wood. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. Clara's ears were ringing. Her hands shook as she pulled out the pistol Wade had given her earlier. Stay down! Wade shouted over the gunfire. But Clara could see one of Mercer's men circling around the side of the house. She aimed and fired. The recoil nearly knocked her over, but the shot hit its mark. The man went down. Wade looked at her, surprised. Where'd you learn to shoot? Chicago's not as civilized as you'd think. Wade actually laughed. Then he was up and firing, covering Henry as the old cowboy ran from the barn to a better position. The fight lasted less than 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. When the smoke finally cleared, 4 of Mercer's men were down, 2 had run, and Mercer himself was pinned behind an overturned wagon, bleeding from a shoulder wound. Wade stood and walked towards him, rifle aimed. Mercer looked up, his face twisted with rage and pain. You should have taken the money, Blackthorne. Probably, but I don't have many regrets. Mercer's hand moved toward his belt. Wade fired. The bullet hit the ground inches from Mercer's hand. Don't, Wade said quietly. Mercer froze. And then, from behind the barn, Marshal Garrett appeared with 6 deputies. "Vincent Mercer," Garrett said, "you're under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and a whole list of other charges I'll be happy to read you on the way to Cheyenne." Mercer's face went slack with shock. "How? You really thought we weren't watching?" Garrett pulled him to his feet roughly. "We've been tracking you since you left the rail station, wanted to catch you in the act." He glanced at Wade. Sorry for cutting it close. Had to make sure he actually made a move. Wade lowered his rifle. "Next time, give us a heads up." Garrett grinned. "Where's the fun in that?" As the deputies hauled Mercer away, he twisted to look at Clara. "This isn't over, Margaret." "Yes," Clara said quietly. "It is." And for the first time in 2 years, she believed it. After the deputies left with Mercer and his remaining men in chains, the ranch slowly came back to life. The women and children emerged from the cellar. The men cleaned up the yard, repairing what they could, and Clara sat on the porch steps, shaking so hard she could barely hold the cup of coffee Henry had pressed into her hands. It was over. Really, truly over. Mercer was in custody. The documents were in Garrett's hands. The conspiracy was exposed. She was free. The thought was so overwhelming she couldn't process it. Wade sat down beside her, his shoulder brushing hers. "You okay?" he asked quietly. Clara let out a shaky laugh. "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." "Fair enough." They sat in silence for a while, watching the sun disappear behind the hills. Then Clara said, "I shot a man tonight." Wade glanced at her. "Yeah, you did. I've never done that before. You saved Henry's life. He was pinned down, would have been killed if you hadn't." Clara stared at her hands. "I know, but it still feels wrong? Heavy?" Wade nodded. "Yeah, it does." "Does it get easier?" "No, but you learn to carry it." Clara leaned against him and Wade wrapped his arm around her. "Thank you," she whispered, "for fighting for me." "Always," Wade said, and he meant it. The next few weeks were strange. Life on the ranch went back to normal, but Clara felt different, lighter, like she'd been carrying a weight for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like without it. She cooked, she laughed, she played with Noah and teased the ranch hands and let herself just exist without constantly looking over her shoulder. It was wonderful and terrifying, because she'd never let herself have this before, never let herself hope for anything permanent. But now, watching Wade work in the fields or listening to Noah read aloud in the evenings, she realized something. She wanted this, not just for now, for always. One evening, about a month after Mercer's arrest, Wade found her in the kitchen after everyone had gone to bed. "Can't sleep?" he asked. Clara shook her head. "Too much on my mind." Wade poured himself coffee and sat across from her. "Want to talk about it?" Clara hesitated. Then she said, "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Mercer's in prison. The conspiracy's been exposed, the threat's gone." She met his eyes. "So, what happens to me?" Wade frowned. "What do you want to happen?" "I don't know. That's the problem." Clara's voice shook. "For 2 years, all I've done is run, hide, survive. I didn't let myself think about the future because I didn't think I'd have one. But now you do. Yeah, and I don't know what to do with it." Wade was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What if you stayed?" Clara's heart jumped. "Here?" "Yeah, here." Wade's voice was careful. "Not as the cook, as..." He stopped, frustrated. Clara waited. Wade took a breath. "I'm not good at this. Never have been. But I'm gonna try." He looked at her, his gray eyes serious. "I love you, Clara. I love the way you make Noah laugh. I love the way you've brought this place back to life. I love that you're stubborn and brave and terrible at lying." Despite everything, Clara smiled. "I don't have much to offer," Wade continued. "This ranch is still barely scraping by. I'm not rich, I'm not charming, and I come with a lot of baggage. Wade, but if you'll have me, if you'll stay, I promise I'll spend every day trying to make you happy." His voice roughened. "Marry me, Clara. Stay here. Build a life with me, with Noah, with all of us." Clara's vision blurred with tears. "You're serious." "Never been more serious about anything in my life." "Wade, She stopped, overwhelmed. "I'm a mess. I've got scars and secrets, and I don't know if I even know how to be happy anymore." "Then we'll figure it out together." "What if I'm not good at this? What if I mess it up?" Wade reached across the table and took her hand. "Then we'll mess it up together. And we'll fix it. And we'll keep trying. 'Cause that's what people do when they love each other." Clara's tears spilled over. "I don't deserve you. That's not your call to make." Wade smiled. "So what do you say? Will you marry me?" Clara looked at him, really looked at him. At this man who'd chosen her over money, over safety, over everything. This man who'd fought for her when she couldn't fight for herself. This man who loved her, scars and all. And she realized something. Maybe she didn't have to be perfect. Maybe she didn't have to have all the answers. Maybe she just had to be brave enough to try. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." Wade's smile was brighter than she'd ever seen it. He stood, pulled her to her feet, and kissed her like they had all the time in the world. And for the first time in Clara's life, she believed they might. They were married in March, just as winter started to loosen its grip on Wyoming. It wasn't a fancy wedding, no elaborate dress or decorated church, just Clara in a simple blue dress she'd sewn herself, standing in the ranch house living room with Wade beside her and Noah holding the rings. Henry and the ranch hands crowded in, grinning like fools. A traveling preacher said the words. And when Wade kissed her, Clara felt something inside her finally settle into place. She was home. The reception was loud and chaotic. Someone brought out a fiddle. The men danced badly and drank heavily and told embarrassing stories about Wade that made Clara laugh until her sides hurt. Noah appointed himself the guardian of the cake and took his job very seriously. And through it all, Wade kept finding excuses to touch Clara's hand, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. Late in the evening, when most of the guests had stumbled home or passed out in the barn, Clara found herself on the porch with Wade. The night was cold but clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. Wade wrapped his coat around her shoulders. "Happy?" Clara leaned against him, terrified. "But happy?" Wade chuckled. "That's about right." They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Clara said quietly, "I never thought I'd have this." "This? A home, a family, someone who..." Her voice caught. "Someone who chose me." Wade turned her to face him. "Clara, listen to me. You're not some consolation prize. You're not second best. You're..." He struggled for words. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me. To this ranch, to Noah, and I'd choose you every single day for the rest of my life." Clara's tears fell freely now. "Even when I'm difficult? Especially then? Even when I burn the biscuits? That's never happened and we both know it." Clara laughed through her tears. "I love you, Wade Blackthorne." "I love you too, Mrs. Blackthorne." Mrs. Blackthorne. The name settled over her like a warm blanket. She wasn't Margaret Ashcombe anymore. Wasn't Clara Bennett. She was Clara Blackthorne. And for the first time in her life, that felt right. The years that followed weren't perfect. The ranch still struggled sometimes. Money was tight, winters were hard. Wade's shoulder never fully healed, aching on cold days. Clara had nightmares occasionally, waking up convinced Mercer had escaped and was coming for her. And Noah, sweet, resilient Noah, still had moments where the grief of losing his parents overwhelmed him. But they got through it, together. The ranch slowly grew, the herd increased, they hired more men, fixed the barn properly. Noah grew into a strong, kind young man who looked more like his father every year. And eventually, there were other children, a daughter with Clara's eyes and Wade's stubbornness, a son who followed Noah everywhere like a devoted shadow. The house that had once felt cold and dead filled with noise and laughter and life. On quiet evenings, Clara would stand in the kitchen, her kitchen now, and watch her family through the window. Wade and the boys working in the corral, her daughter helping Noah with the horses, Henry sitting on the porch, older now, but still ornery as ever. And she'd think about the scared, desperate woman who'd stepped off that stagecoach years ago with nothing but lies and a suitcase full of secrets. That woman had been so certain she was broken beyond repair, so convinced she didn't deserve love or safety or peace. But she'd been wrong, 'cause love wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about having all the answers or never being afraid. It was about showing up, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. It was about choosing someone every day, even when they drove you crazy. It was about building something together, piece by piece, and trusting that it would hold. One evening, many years after that March wedding, Clara sat on the porch, watching the sunset. Wade settled into the chair beside her with a groan. Getting old. You've been saying that for 10 years. It's been true for 10 years. Clara smiled. How's your shoulder? Hurts like hell. How's your face? Clara touched the faint scar on her cheekbone, the only visible reminder of Mercer's blow. Same as always. Wade reached over and took her hand. You're still beautiful. You're still a terrible liar. I'm serious. Clara looked at him, at the grey in his hair and the lines around his eyes and the scar tissue on his shoulder that still showed through his shirt sometimes. So are you, she said softly. Wade brought her hand to his lips and kissed it. They sat like that as the sun disappeared and the stars came out. Inside they could hear the children arguing about something. Noah's voice, deeper now, trying to mediate. We should probably go in, Clara said. Probably. Neither of them moved. Clara? Yeah? I'm glad you stayed. Clara's throat tightened. Me too. And she meant it with everything she had, 'cause the truth was, love had found her in the most unlikely place, on a failing ranch in the middle of nowhere, in the arms of a broken cowboy who'd forgotten how to hope, and it had healed them both, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to build a life, enough to raise a family, enough to prove that sometimes the best things come when you stop running and finally let yourself be found. Clara had spent years believing she was unworthy of love, that she was too damaged, too hunted, too scared to deserve anything good. But Wade had taught her something different. He taught her that real love wasn't about deserving, it was about choosing, and he'd chosen her. Every single day, through every struggle and setback, he'd chosen her, and she'd chosen him right back. That, Clara realized, was what made it work. Not perfection, not ease, just two imperfect people deciding over and over again that they were worth fighting for. Inside, something crashed. A child wailed. Noah shouted for help. Wade sighed. Duty calls. Clara stood, but Wade pulled her back for one more kiss. Love you, he murmured against her lips. Love you too. They went inside together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever chaos awaited, because that's what they did. They showed up, they chose each other, and they built a life worth living, one imperfect, beautiful day at a time.